Hello everyone, and today we're going to take our engine cover from our 2020 Mustang and we're going to add a little bit of offset color to it to make it look like this beautiful engine cover we have right here. Now this process is pretty universal, so it should work for you as well. So let's get started. And of course, for our very first step, we're going to go ahead and remove our engine cover. Now mine only requires a trim removal tool, however, depending on your make and model, it may require additional tools. Now I'll go ahead and bring this inside, that way we can get out of that sun glare. And I'm going to go ahead and place it on two sawhorses just because it makes it very easy and convenient to paint. And I'll also remove the brackets from my engine cover. These are custom brackets that I put together, and all they do is bolt right on. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, and 4. So now we can begin the paint process, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and scuff up the surface. And I'm going to use a gray scuffing pad, which is equivalent to about 800 grit sandpaper. If you wish, you can also use sandpaper as well, about 600 grit will do. I'm using the scuff pad just because this thing has a lot of nooks and crannies, and it makes it easier to get in between them. And as you may have noticed, I'm using soapy water with the scuffing pad for two reasons. One, to clean the surface, that way it gets all the oils and anything that's really embedded into your engine cover, as well as two, to really prevent really deep scratches. The whole idea is we just want to scuff up the surface, that way the primer has something to adhere to. And now let's go ahead and step outside for a moment and let's go ahead and rinse this off. Now I'm going to go ahead and use a water hose just because it's really convenient, because this thing does have a lot of surface area. And that looks pretty good right there, and I'll bring it inside and let it dry off. And after a few moments have passed, I'm going to grab some IPA, or rubbing alcohol, and a microfiber cloth, and I'm going to go ahead and start wiping on the surface. This will make sure we got all that soapy residue left behind or any areas we may have missed from earlier. And after the IPA dried, let's go ahead and grab our adhesive promoter. This stuff is great for any type of plastic parts. So let's go ahead and shake for 2 minutes. Then I'll take my shop towel, wipe off the nozzle. You're going to see me do this periodically through the video. And our whole goal is to apply 2 light coats of adhesive promoter, then primer, then base coat, then clear coat. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply this promoter first, and I'm going to try to make sure I got every nook and cranny covered. Wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll go apply our second coat. And I went ahead and switched directions just to make sure we got all our corners covered. And after 20 minutes have passed, our adhesive promoter is dry, so now we can apply our primer. So same thing, we're going to shake for 2 minutes, wipe the nozzle off with our shop towel, and then go ahead and start applying nice even coats. And I'm going to go ahead and start spraying before the part and continue till after the part. And our goal for this stage is to apply 2 thin coats of primer and then a third medium coat. Because our goal is to create the first coat kind of as your tack coat, give you something to stick to, and it doesn't have to give you full coverage, it doesn't have to change the whole color. It's going to look light somewhat like this. And then after 10 minutes, we'll go ahead and wipe the nozzle and apply the second coat. And same thing, this one's going to be a slightly light coat just to provide a little bit better of a tack surface. And as you may have noticed, you're going to see some of the color start becoming more gray. We do have a little bit of black showing through, but it's got better color coverage. And I try to make sure I get all my corners covered, especially a little bit under the lip. And now for our third and final coat, wipe the nozzle again. And this one's going to kind of be of a medium coat, so it's going to look really wet. And that looks really good so far, so go ahead and let this dry for 50 minutes, and then we'll grab a tack cloth. Now since this is dry, we should be able to go ahead and tack cloth this up, and this will get any free dust that's sitting right on top of the primer. And these tack cloths are great when it comes to cleaning the surface. You don't need to apply too hard, you just want to make sure you got every area covered, because that will help with the base coat. Because the last thing you want to see is little specks of dust in the base coat, because that's going to be an eyesore later on. And speaking of the base coat, let's go ahead and apply it right now. Now this is one I found that was closest I can get to a dark blue. And as you can see, it says 4 dark blue, so that's the closest I can get to my 2020 Mustang Kona Blue. But we'll give it a shot. So we'll go ahead and shake for 2 minutes. Pop the top off. Go ahead and wipe the nozzle off. Test spray. I always wipe the nozzle off in between sprays just because you don't want it to get clogged. And same thing as earlier, we're going to go ahead and start before the part, continue spraying until after the part. And this is going to be the same process as we did with the primer. We're going to do 2 light coats just to make sure we have a nice tacky surface. And then we're going to do a third wet medium coat. And it's very important we don't make the coats very heavy, because later on in the video I'm going to show you what happens if you make it too heavy in a specific area. So let's go ahead and finish off this first coat, then we'll wait 10 minutes and go ahead and apply the second coat. And same thing, this one's going to be slightly light and it's going to be the same process. So I'll try to make sure I have every nook and cranny covered, and I try to go under it a little bit as well just to get under the lip. And that looks pretty good. Now let's go and do our third and final coat, wipe the nozzle, and this is going to be a medium coat. So it's going to look a little wetter than the first 2. Now there is something I want to touch base on that is very important. This is an engine paint, which means it's great for the temperature. However, the caveat behind that is, it does require 7 days to fully cure, as well as there is a recoat or a coating window. So anytime you use this product, when you spray down a layer, you have 1 hour to spray the next layer, and every time you spray a layer, it resets that 1 hour window. Now, if you're painting this a single color, you don't have to wait the 7 days, which I'm about to do. You can go straight to step 16. But if you're going to apply another color, we're going to go ahead and scuff the surface again, but this time we're going to use a white scuffing pad, which is about 1200 grit sandpaper. And I'm going to do the same process earlier. I want to go ahead and scuff this up just enough to remove kind of that shine. And we're using a 1200 grit scuffing pad or sandpaper just because we want to remove any of that paint. So we're kind of doing this very lightly. And that looks pretty good, so let's go ahead and rinse off the surface. I'm going to do it with the spray bottle this time, that way I can stay warm. And I'll go ahead and wipe it down with a microfiber cloth. And similar to the earlier steps, I'll grab our IPA or rubbing alcohol and a microfiber cloth, and we'll go ahead and wipe down the surface. Same reasons as earlier, we just want to make sure there's no soapy residue left behind. So now we begin the long and tedious part. Now we get to prep our paint area. And this will require some painter's tape and some drop cloth. And I want to go ahead and start taping off certain areas, that way I don't paint the whole engine cover white. I just want the trenches and the 5.0 to be white. I'm just going to go ahead and tape it very gently along the trench, and I'm trying to go as perfectly as I can along the edge. This does take quite a bit of time, and it does require a lot of patience. So as you can see, I'm just doing one area at a time. And when you start getting the twists and turns, that's where it gets really difficult. Because I'm taking basically small pieces of tape and then my X-Acto knife, and I'm cutting along the edge. I'm basically freehanding these edges. And then I very carefully lift up that tape without scratching the paint, and there we go. So there's one edge done. Then I pretty much repeat the same process on the other side as well. Again, just takes time and patience. Now, by me taping off the 5.0, I'm basically glutton for punishment because this requires a lot of tedious work. This is something you almost wish you had a template for. But since I don't, I went ahead and taped off all the edges. And now I'll put a piece of tape right in the middle over where the 0 is, and I'll take a pencil to kind of outline where it's at. Luckily, there's a divot there, so it helps it out. And that kind of pushes the tape down as well as gives me an area to go ahead and cut off. So I'll take my X-Acto knife, start gently cutting around, and then lift it up. And then pretty much do the exact same spots on the 5 as well. Just do one area at a time. Take my X-Acto knife, start cutting along it, and then lift it up. And I'm going very gentle on the X-Acto knife. I'm not pressing down to the paint. I'm just doing enough to cut the tape. And now that the hard part's over, we can lay down some drop cloth. And I'm pretty much going to go ahead and do the edges in the middle. Just pretty much where we don't want any overspray of this white paint, because that would look really bad when it overspraying on the blue. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and take some tack cloth and go ahead and wipe the surface down before we paint. Same thing, we just want to remove any dust or debris that's left right on top of this base coat. And that looks pretty clean. Then we'll go ahead and grab our white engine paint. Same thing as earlier, shake for 2 minutes, wipe the nozzle, and we're going to apply nice thin coats. Now this is going to require more than 3 coats because we're spraying white paint on a dark surface. And this is going to be the same process as earlier. We're going to start with 2 light coats and then move up to medium coats. So after waiting 10 minutes, we'll spray our second coat. And as you see, we're starting to get a little color change, just taking time. And we'll go ahead and get our third coat. And this is going to be a little bit wetter. This is going to be our medium coat. And I'm just changing directions a little bit just to make sure we get all those corners covered. And then we'll go ahead and do our fourth coat. Again, 10 minutes between these coats. And after waiting just a few minutes, let's go ahead and remove the tape. We kind of want to do this while it's still wet. So we'll start the drop cloth first. And I'm trying to be very careful. I don't want any of this white paint touching our engine cover because that would look really bad if it smears. And when pulling the tape, we want to pull at a 45-degree angle. We don't want to just snatch it right off because we don't want to make it look like we have paint tears. So I'm taking my time and I want to make sure I got everything taken off very gently. I'm going along the edge here. And I'm trying to do my best to kind of roll the tape over itself. I don't want any of this wet paint touching any of the dry paint. See if I can go ahead and peel that right off. And now let's get to the tricky area. See if we can get the 5.0 off. Alright, now we'll get the little circle out. And I took the X-Acto knife just to peel a little bit of it up. And that looks pretty good. Now I want to pick up the camera because I want to show you where I did a rookie mistake. So you remember earlier in the video where I say spray light coats because if you go too heavy, something bad will happen? Well, this is what bad will happen. In this one little area, I sprayed a little too heavy and it caused cracking when it started drying. So I do need to fix this. And unfortunately, the way to fix this, I had to wait 7 days to let it fully cure. And then I was able to go ahead and start scuffing it up and begin fixing it. So I started with my 1200 grit sandpaper or my white scuffing pad, scuffed up the whole surface. And I went ahead and sanded down that one area that had the cracking. I basically made it so I sanded it down back to where you saw blue. And of course I rinsed it off, taped everything off again, and I went ahead and sprayed down the whole surface again by doing light coats. And I did the 5.0 a little bit just as a little touch-up. And after letting everything dry for about 50 minutes, go ahead and take our tack cloth and go ahead and wipe everything down once again. We want to remove all that dust from the engine cover because we don't want this to show up anywhere on this clear coat. And that looks pretty good. So now let's go ahead and grab our engine clear coat, go ahead and pop off the top, and then we'll go ahead and shake for 2 minutes. And it's going to be the same process earlier, 2 light coats and then medium coats. And for this process, I'm probably going to use up the whole can just to make sure I have a nice shine and good coverage of this clear. So after letting that sit for about 10 minutes, we'll go ahead and apply our second coat. I try to switch directions whenever I can just to make sure I get all those little corners that I may not have sprayed when I did one particular direction. And then we'll apply our third coat after waiting 10 minutes, and this one's going to be a little bit wetter. Same thing, I want to make sure I got good coverage. And it's starting to look really good so far. And then we'll do our fourth and final coat. And I'm going to take my time and get a little bit closer to the part because this is going to be probably my thickest coat. And after letting this sit for the day, I can go ahead and reinstall my brackets. Now for you, you may not have these, but for me, I just went ahead and bolted these right back on. So there's 2, 3, and 4. And for our very last step, we just got to install our engine cover. Now I'm using a microfiber cloth just to make sure I don't leave any fingerprints or anything on the actual cover itself. And I'm trying to go very gently. I'm basically trying to set it in place without letting it touch or scratch anything. And then I'll go ahead and snap it all in place by pushing the studs right into that intake manifold. And yeah, it looks pretty good. And I'll give it a little quick wipe down. Man, this thing looks really nice. It looks really good. And now let's take a step back and look at our product. So far, this looks really good. The paint looks really nice. Now, I do wish it was a little bit darker. I might experiment on my next video to try to go ahead and mix paint to make this kind of a Kona blue. But so far, this came out looking really good. Now, off camera, I also painted this engine cover as well to match this twister orange. And as you can see, this came out looking awesome. We added a little bit of black offset to it to match the black accent of this Mustang. Well, if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe.